Welcome to Worldview Matters, discussing controversial issues, discerning current events, defending biblical Christianity. No topic off limits. And now, here's your host, David Fiorazzo.
Hi, friends, family in Christ. Thanks so much for watching, sharing the podcast. And there are some guests that I wish we had an hour, and today's guest is one of them. I want to direct you to a couple websites. First of all, Chad Robichaux will be joining us in a minute. You got a brand new book out, and I'm talking hot off the presses. It's called A Mission Without Borders: Why a Father and Son Risked It All for People of Ukraine. And also, we want to direct you to the website, mightyoaksprograms.org, Mighty Oaks Programs, and Chad's website, chadrobichaux.com. And we'll talk about his podcast, and we just want to bring him on right now. Brother, thank you so much for all you do. Thank you for your time today. Good to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thank you. Well, first of all, the podcast, how often do you do it? How can people hear it?
Yeah, it's called The Resilient Show. I do it weekly. This new episode drops every Monday. We have some, incredible guests: Terry Crews, Sean Ryan, Kaylee McEnany. Every week we just have some phenomenal guests, and we talk about topics that mainstream media doesn't typically cover, and how people can be more resilient in this, ever-changing world that we find ourselves in.
You mentioned Terry Crews, and I see there's a benefit coming up, the 4th Annual Warrior Gala, and that's on mightyoaksprograms.org. And I just want to read the description and have you tell us a little bit more. It says, the Mighty Oaks Foundation is a faith-based veteran service organization that teaches combat veterans struggling with post-traumatic stress how to get beyond combat trauma and live their lives in the manner God intended. Tall order, brother, but I got your newsletter. I got a lot of testimonies from people that have been through it, that are raving about it. Share a little bit more, please.
Yeah, well, about 14 years ago is when Mighty Oaks began. It began from me doing my 8 deployments to Afghanistan and special operations, coming home, falling on my face, and just some amazing people coming around me to help me, restore my family, overcome my battle with suicide, and not become another veteran suicide statistic. And through all the things that people helped me with, nothing was more profound to me than being led to a relationship with Jesus and aligning my life with the life I was created to live, and finding hope and restoration and purpose there. And that purpose really manifested for me in just this deep burden that God put on my heart to pay it forward. And that was again 14 years ago. And since then, we've had over 7,000 people have come to this recovery program. We do about $8 million a year in programming for absolutely free to active duty service members, veterans, first responders, spouses. We have a recovery program. That's our recovery program at these places, these amazing ranches we have around the country. We do about 50 of them a year. And while we had 7,000 people over the last 14 years, we're doing about 1,000 per year now. And again, we even pay for their flights. We have a resiliency program where I go to bases around the world and speak on resiliency, mentally, physically, socially, spiritually. I've spoken about 500,000 troops in the last decade at bases around the world. And really just giving a message of hope and resiliency through a relationship with Jesus. And we have books that we give out. Some of the books I've written, we've given out over about 400,000 copies of our books now to the troops. And we have an advocacy program where even like next month, I'll be testifying before Congress on faith-based programs. President Trump had appointed me to be a chairman of the White House Faith-Based Coalition on Veterans Affairs to make sure our troops have access to faith-based programs. And the last thing we do at Mighty Oaks is an international program where we take these same programs we do here and we share them with our allied partners around the world, and just help them to find the same hope that we have here. So
you have an amazing story, amazing testimony. I mean, as you said, you were confronted with your own suicide. Your thoughts about that and how deep that goes, and you overcame. All about PTSD. You were in combat, Marine Corps veteran. You were, what is a Force Recon? Explain that. USMC Force Recon veteran. Explain that real quick.
Yeah, well, every branch of the military has their own special operations. The Navy is known for the Navy SEALs, and the Army has the Green Berets and the special operations component of the Rangers. Air Force has pararescue and combat controllers, and the Marine Corps has two. The Marine Corps has Recon, and then the top tier of Recon is Force Recon, and then MARSOC. So I was a Force Recon Marine, served in special operations in that capacity. I tried out for a JSOC task force, a Joint Special Operations Command task force, and represented the Marine Corps at JSOC, which is the premier special operations that combines all the branches together. It kind of represents all the branches, and then we have, at JSOC you have Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, unit called Task Force Orange, and so I got to represent the Marine Corps at that command, and did 8 deployments to Afghanistan in that capacity.
So President Trump said, by the way, it's right on your website, thank you for sharing your incredible story, Chad. I extend my personal gratitude for your distinguished and steadfast service to our country. And I want to read one of the testimonies that I got from the Mighty Oaks program. Brennan said, I expected the course to be more heavily focused on PTSD and less on biblical principles. I'm glad I was mistaken. This has been the best veteran experience I've had. I've been blessed to work with other veteran organizations, but never has the foundation been the Word of God. I needed this, and I'm excited to share this experience with other veterans and first responders. So you're doing great work, Chad. Kudos, brother. And let's go back to Afghanistan now. I think that's where, now we're going to get to your brand new book coming up in a minute here, A Mission Without Borders, but we've got to talk about Saving Aziz, which is going to be a feature film now, hugely popular book, but the story is really amazing in and of itself. Please just, I know you can bullet point that, you're a pro at this point, how how the mission to help one became a calling to rescue thousands from the Taliban. Go ahead, brother, share, Chad.
Yeah, like you said, I could spend hours talking about the Saving Aziz story. But, Aziz and I had a very unique job when I went to that JSOC unit. My job was an AFO, Advanced Force Operator, which means it's probably the closest thing in the military to being undercover. And you work in what's called a singleton capacity by yourself. But your partner is not a U.S. service member. It's a local national. And so for me, it was Aziz. Aziz and I did all 8 of my deployments together, hundreds of missions going ahead of our unit to do all the clandestine logistics to put our assaulters on target to capture or kill bad guys. And that was my job, And so while I can tell you that Aziz saved my life several times in combat, he probably saved my life every day, trying to get me around different parts of the country, in Pakistan and Afghanistan to be in Taliban villages and not stand out and don't eat that, don't walk there, don't talk to that person. If you talk right now, they're going to kill us. So he kept me alive, and we became very close friends. And beyond him saved my life, I didn't go back to base. We went operating, and he went home. I went to his home. I lived in his home. I held his babies when they were born. So he was my friend. Just my teammate. He's my friend. And so when the Afghanistan withdrawal happened and President Biden announced a full and complete withdrawal of Afghanistan, I had a lot of problems with that. First of all, I think regardless of what president it would have been, to leave Afghanistan was a catastrophic mistake for national security and global security. I mean, you're talking Bagram Air Force Base, the most strategic place on the globe between Iraq, Iran, Russia, and China. You don't forfeit that. You could have declared the war on terror over. You could have, and we could have supported and advised the Afghan National Army like we had been doing since 2018, but you don't give up that base. The international community was participating there to fight global war on terrorism, and it was working. The lie that American people were told that we needed to end this war and we needed to stop putting American troops in harm's way. The truth is we had 2,500 troops there. We still have 80,000 troops in Japan since World War II. We have 40,000 troops in Germany since World War II. We have 35,000 troops in South Korea on that 38th parallel, keeping the North Koreans from coming over. Having our troops in places like this and putting contingencies like this doesn't keep us in war, prevents war. And so that was a lie of the American people. We withdrew in a way that was horrific, that turned over the country of Afghanistan. We left Americans behind. We left our allies behind. We left $80 billion in equipment behind. We still giving, by the way, $85 million a week to the Taliban while terrorism is growing in Afghanistan. And we're giving that money to people that are sanctioned and on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, so it's a complete atrocity. So all these things I didn't agree with, I couldn't change. And I kind of went on a tangent there. But the one thing I could control and could do, even as a civilian, was to go and get my friend, Aziz. So I made a decision that while I was not happy with this withdrawal, I was going to do my part to go get my friend. And so I called a couple of other special operations veterans that I knew well and trusted and said, hey, I'm going to go get Aziz, his wife, and his 6 kids. Will you help? And I have some great friends with a lot of experience. And we put together a team of about 12 guys from, Navy SEALs to Green Berets to Recon Marines to got a few guys from CIA's paramilitary unit. And we put together this team. And while we were planning this effort to go get Aziz's wife and 6 kids, we realized how tragic this really was. There was a call that came in, or a text that came in, that these group of orphans, about 3,000 orphans, had just been abandoned. Oh. And in that moment, we made a decision, and God, I think, burdened all of our hearts to say, beyond Aziz, beyond his wife and 6 kids, let's go help as many people as we can, Americans, interpreters, allies. And so we leaned forward to do that. We, as Isaiah 6:8 says, send me. We all had that send me heart. And beyond that decision, God performed a miracle that allowed us not only to rescue Aziz, his wife, and the 6 kids, but 17,000 other people, which, by the way, ended up being the largest civilian evacuation in American history. And I say that not to pat myself in the back here. I say that to say that this was a God orchestrated miracle. I'm not smart enough, by the way, or capable enough to pull anything like that off. Yeah. God, miracle after miracle after miracle to pull that off. It was absolutely amazing, and so the book captures that story and highlights some amazing people that I was proud to be served with. It glorifies God and what God did, and then it's been made in a very big motion picture movie. And I'm very proud. I was nervous about that at first, but I'm very proud to see it's going to be done well and done right by some amazing folks. Awesome. Some of the few amazing folks left in Hollywood.
Yeah. Yep. So when can we be expecting that? Is that next year?
Yeah, probably looking at early. It'll actually hit theaters probably early 2026.
Okay.
Into 2025, 2026, as when it'll hit theaters. It's being produced now, and I can't say who, but there's some people involved in it, and from acting to directing that and most people listening would recognize who they are. So.
Great. Well, Chad, it's an amazing story. No wonder they're going to take the book and make a movie out of it. And if you go to chadrobichaux.com and click on About, you can scroll down where it says Friend. You'll see a picture of Aziz, and he's the man that spent, did you say, Chad, 8 missions with you, and they were going to leave him behind?
Well, we did 8 deployments and over 100 missions with me. He served at America's top tier special operations unit. I believe that, at JSOC, the number 1 special operations unit in the world. He served there for over 15 years.
Wow.
And so him and amongst with all of our other allies, we left. We didn't only leave Americans behind. We left our allies, our wartime allies, that we made a contractual promise to for their service to us, that we would give them a path to citizenship. It's called the SIV, Special Immigrant Visa process, and we forfeited. I mean, we did not keep our promise in that, and they're being left behind. Not only that, we left our biometric system there with the Taliban, who has all of our interpreters' identities, their locations, and the Taliban's actually using that with taxpayer money. We're sending them this to hunt them down and murder them for what they did for us. So it's complete betrayal to our allies and every service member. Our service members are and look, beyond that, if you have any kind of heart and care about people, there's 40 million people in Afghanistan, 20 million women and little girls that are being sexually enslaved from the moment we left. Little girls as 9 years old, they're being sexually enslaved. They lost all their human rights. And we did that as a country, and it should apologize for it. It should make it right. But instead, we're sending $87 million a week to them, half of it in cash, that's going right to the Taliban, and it's a complete atrocity. And I'd urge everybody listening to call their congressman and as a constituent say, we're not okay with that.
Well, we need to take a brief pause here, but we can say elections have consequences. And friends, we've got a big election coming up in November, and we got to vote the communists and the socialists out. But more with Chad Robichaux when we come back on Worldview Matters. We'll talk about the brand new book, A Mission Without Borders. That's next.
Today's show is brought to you by Harbinger's Daily. World news biblically understood. Stay informed at harbingersdaily.com.
Hey, friends, if you know someone who might be interested in sponsoring Worldview Matters, please send us an email, worldviewmatters@fpeusa.org. And by the way, if you're listening to our show via audio, help us out by leaving a 5-star review. That helps the show rise in the rankings. And subscribe to our Rumble channel, Freedom Project Media on Rumble. Thank you guys very much. It's been growing like crazy. Chad Robichaux, I didn't get a chance to ask you about your MMA career. My goodness. It's just so vast, all the things that you've been a part of, and then you certainly don't look like a grandfather, and you've got kids and grandkids. So let's go back and just share a little bit about the MMA career, and just for our listeners that don't know about your background, share a little. That's just fascinating.
Yeah, well, I mean, martial arts is something I did since I was 5 years old. So it's never a career I pursued. It was just something I did on the side as in the military. There's like 3 years of my life that I did that at my peak of my fighting that I only fought. It was after my last deployment to Afghanistan, part of my recovery time, that I just solely fought and taught martial arts, and I ended up being ranked number 6 in the world. I won a world title. I was 18-2 as a professional MMA fighter, and my background is, mainly grappling-based martial arts since I was a kid, wrestling and judo and traditional jiu-jitsu. And in 1995, I started Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and I've done, I'm a 4th-degree black belt and a Carlson Gracie Jr. in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and love that art. I still train to this day, but once I started Mighty Oaks, it was time for me to retire. Did 20 professional fights and did pretty good at it, but I still train. And then it's something me and my sons have done. I have 3 kids, 3 adult kids, 27, 26, and 24. Wow. I am a grandfather. I have 4 grandchildren and 1 on the way. And then last year we brought a new daughter into our family. So I have a granddaughter, grandkids that are the same age as my daughter. My wife and I adopted our niece who at birth, and so she's 20 months old now. So we started all over from empty nesting to being a grandparent and parents again at the same time. So she's Summer's my fourth kid and our daughter, and she's just an amazing blessing to us.
Man, you are busy. Anyway, let's jump into the book now, Chad, A Mission Without Borders. 5-star reviews already on Amazon. It's been out, 3 weeks or so, maybe a little bit more than that. But it says you offer an honest, no-holds-barred account of what has really been happening in Ukraine. And you share powerful stories that are soaked in resiliency and determination, faith, and sacrifice in the face of overwhelming opposition. So, Chad, let's just say this right up front. A lot of people have different views on Ukraine and Americans, the U.S. support of Ukraine and Zelensky and the globalists, but the people that are suffering. First of all, just share why you decided to write this book at this time.
Yes, I'm definitely happy to address that because I think it's been a very confusing topic, especially for Christians and conservatives. I mean, obviously, I'm a Christian, first and foremost. I'm very conservative. I'm probably the most patriotic guys I know, and I don't believe in using U.S. taxpayers' dollars to be wasted overseas. So I got a lot of heat from people as I was going to Ukraine. Like, Chad, why would you go to Ukraine? Why would you support this corrupt nation? President Zelensky's corrupt. We shouldn't be sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine. And first of all, I heard those complaints to me, and I agree. That money being sent there is our U.S. taxpayers' dollars that is being sent to a corrupt government and it's being wasted. It's not making it to the front lines. No one knows that better than me. I've been to the front lines over 10 trips now. But I also believe, and I'll say this, I did not go to Ukraine to help President Zelensky. I did not go for President Biden. I believe these corrupt politicians, Zelensky and President Biden, have the ability to end this war in 24 hours, and they don't because they're becoming rich off of it and gaining power off of it. So I did not go for them. Who I went for is the innocent people that are victim of that corruption. And if us as Christians and conservatives ever let our politics and our jadedness get in the way of our compassion for people, then we should change our politics, right? I mean, look, I've been there firsthand and seen, there's been over 1 million people killed at this point, mostly civilians. I've been to the pizza parlors and movie theaters and playgrounds and daycares, just like we have here. This isn't a third world country, not that third world countries deserve that, but this is a first world country like America that have apartment buildings that are being rocketed by ballistic missiles the size of telephone poles. You're talking first world nation, a world superpower attacking another first world nation, and they're targeting civilians intentionally to create fear and terrorize the civilian population to make them fold. And you have corrupt politicians in the middle that are allowing it to happen and not ending it because they want this war to continue. You don't hear President Biden or President Zelensky talking about peace. In fact, the only person you've heard talk about peace is President Trump, who said exactly what I say in the opening of the book, is this thing can be ended in 24 hours, and it can. And so that's why I went to Ukraine, because there are victims that are a result of this corruption. And we've been, one of the first reasons I went there is I knew when this happened, if you go back to Afghanistan, the withdrawal and the way the withdrawal happened, not only was I upset by that, but all of our enemies were watching. Were not upset. They were cheerleading. They're like, yes, our enemies, this is the time to do whatever evil we want to do in the world because we have a weak White House. And I tell you, if you have a weak White House, if you have a weak commander in chief in the United States of America, the world is an unstable and dangerous place. And it's time. Right. It's the game on for the Putins of the world and the President Z's of the world. And that's what happened. And President Putin saw this. He put 100,000 troops on the border, eastern border of Ukraine. He flexed to see what President Biden would do. And President Biden's response was to remove our U.S. troops from Ukraine and to close our embassy and consulate before he removed Americans. So what that did was all of NATO followed, because they always follow what America does, and they gave a green light for Putin to cross. And when Putin came across, we knew before this happened, when Putin would come across, we'd still have Americans there. So my team positioned in place to remove Americans out because our government didn't. And look, you could have whatever political opinion you want, but no matter where you sit, there is never a scenario that the United States government should leave Americans behind in war zones. And we did it in Sudan, we did it in Africa, in Sudan, Africa, we did it in Afghanistan, we did it in some other places of the world, and we did it in Ukraine. And unfortunately, good people like the people I work with had to stand in the gap for our White House to rescue Americans, and that's what we dared to do. We rescued Benjamin Hall, the Fox News reporter, recovered bodies of his teammate. We recovered bodies of U.S. service members who volunteered to go there and fight when our State Department wouldn't and couldn't because of our White House. We jumped in on missions that our Tier 1 JSOC units couldn't do because the White House wouldn't let them. We did operations that our Central Intelligence Agency wanted to do, but they couldn't because of the White House. And we were coordinating with them all the time. By the way, my organization that does this stuff, we deconflict with the Pentagon. We work with JSOC to make sure we're doing deconfliction, and we support as a patriotic surrogate these organizations to do things they either can't or won't do. And so, this was a very coordinated effort with our government, who couldn't do what the White House would not allow them to do, which was the right thing. And so we've rescued tons of people in Ukraine. And one of the things Mighty Oaks did is went in, and Mighty Oaks Foundation went in is train, provide humanitarian aid, but also train pastors to be chaplains to go and minister their congregant members who are now conscripted troops on the front lines. And so we've actually trained to this date, I think 300 plus pastors to be chaplains and help get them on the front line. Wow. It's an incredible thing to be part of. I think one of the biggest things I take away from the book and talk about in the book is the fact that I did this with my son. We have 84 years of service in our family, from World War I to Korea, Vietnam. I was a Marine. Both my sons are Marines. One of them is an Afghanistan veteran, just like me. And he wanted to come to do this. And I tried to bench him in the beginning out of my fear and control as a father. And God just had different plans, and so did my son. And it came a point to where I had to realize that, I love my son, but God loves him more. I can protect my son, but God can protect him more. And there's no safer place for my son to be, whether on a couch back in Texas or in the front lines of Ukraine amongst Russian forces. There's no safer place for him to be than the middle of God's will. And I had to release that fear to faith in my son and to God to allow him to do what God was burdening his heart to do. And that was so to me, that the most craziest part of this book and story is the relationship between me and my son, and taking him into a war zone with me, which is something that no father ever wants to do. But I had to succumb to that and submit to that. Wow. Because that was I felt that was God's will. And that's my biggest takeaway from this book, by the way.
There's no safer place to be than in God's will. That's what you said. And your son, it's just amazing. So it says you did 7 trips and you saw a change in your son as his confidence grew and excelled. But that conversation or conversations before he decided to go, or you decided to allow him to go, that must have been fascinating. Do you detail that in the book as well?
Oh, yeah. The whole book kind of, one of the strings through the whole book is that relationship between me and my son, and him wanting to go and hit the different steps of letting him get involved, more and more involved to the end. And ultimately by the end, I did 10 trips to Ukraine, and he's done more than me now. He's done 13 trips to Ukraine. And, he's been, done some amazing work that I'm extremely proud of. So yeah, he's been there more than I have now. And, but yeah, through the book, from the very beginning to the end is that journey that he and I went on as a father and son through this.
Chad, before we let you go, just 3 minutes left. Talk a little bit more about the chaplains and the inspiring work that they're doing in Ukraine and reaching people that are suffering and hurting and in need, the real victims.
Yeah, I mean, because when One of the things that I think Americans, one of the great things about being in America and one of the terrible things about being in America is we're in this bubble, and we don't realize how great we have
Yes.
our life is because of the freedoms of one ordained by God, and the freedoms that we've been protected by every man and woman who's worn a uniform since 1775 and fought, bled, and died for those freedoms. We're part of only 25% of the world that have religious freedoms, and we're free of persecution, and we can go in a pulpit and Sunday and either give or hear the word of God. And so we just have this amazing opportunity that we just take for granted sometimes. And we think that this can never happen to us. In Ukraine, these people would have thought this can never happen, right? Ukraine's a first world country. There's malls and just regular everyday life, and so you imagine being at a church one Sunday and the congregation is filled with 50% men, 50% women. The next Sunday you go, all the men are gone from 16 years old to 60 years old. They're all gone, and you imagine being that pastor saying, "These are I knew little Ivan since he was 5 years old, and now he's 22 years old and he's off." And these pastors wanted to go to the front line where their men were conscripted and be able to go minister to them on the battlefield because Ukraine didn't really have a chaplaincy. And so, but these pastors don't know how to sleep in the woods, poop in the woods, not be a burden to the troops, how to be a chaplain, how to minister to people dealing with PTSD. They didn't know how to apply medical, first aid and not be a burden. So we saw that need. And so Mighty Oaks and our team at Mighty Oaks, these are guys who came through Mighty Oaks as students and now become team leaders and want to go around the world and pay it forward, put together a program to train. And again, now it's been over 300 chaplains, train these pastors to be chaplains and equip them and supply them to move forward and help coordinate and move them forward to the front line so they can minister to their congregate members on the front line from their communities. And it's been an amazing thing to watch our team do that and be part of that.
Wow. Incredible things happening behind the scenes. We're thankful for you to share some of that insight. And in the books, friends, both A Mission Without Borders and Saving Aziz, I encourage you to check that out. And then you'll be ready for the movie when the movie comes out.
Yes.
In 26. Brother, thank you for your time. I love your story and everything that you're involved with. Most importantly, that you are submitting to God's will and glorifying Him in your life. So praise God for you. Thanks again for being a blessing to our viewers today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. ChadRobichaux.com, MightyOaksPrograms.org. Wow, guys, so much more. But thank you for sharing the podcast. And as always, God bless you. Keep speaking the truth about things that matter.